As Robert said, my name is Bill Puller, Marine Corps veteran. Served during the late part of the Cold War and during Desert Storm, which is where this story takes place. It's just before midnight, and I'm sitting in the back of a CH-46 helicopter. And for those of you who don't know that kind of helicopter that is, it's the one with the two rotor blades, one in the front, one in the back. And with me are my squad of 12 Marines and our platoon's Navy corpsman. And as we take off and we get away from the ship, the first thing I noticed was how dark it was. There was no moon. It was very hot. And in fact, the only visible light was this green glow that came from the instruments up in the cockpit. So we're flying, heading towards our target. And our mission for tonight is to seize and secure an offshore oil platform. As I said, we're just flying along in the dark. And all of a sudden, I just get this 1 minute out over my headset. So I nudge the sleeping Marine next to me and I tell him, well, 1 minute out. He starts passing it down. And one by one, each Marine starts to wake up, adjust their gear, and do their last minute weapons check. At about 30 seconds away from the target, the ramp drops on the helo. That's our signal to stand up because we're ready to get off. And we land on the landing platform, helo landing platform of the oil rig. And I take about 2 steps, which is when for some reason I thought it was a good time to do a random gravity check. I fell down. 2 important factors about this oil rig that you should know. The first one is that the helo landing platform is about 120 feet up from the waterline. That's about 12 stories. So if you fall off or if you get blown off, the best case scenario is you have a permanent limp and really good parking at Kroger. The second thing you should know is that the helo landing pad is just steel plates. Now on Navy ships, they have this material called non-skid, and like its name, you don't slide on it. It'll tear you up. But this particular oil platform, the helo landing pad was made of just steel plates. So the second thing you should know, that as an operational oil rig, every metal surface, including the landing pad, was covered with this thin sheen of oil. So the next part of the festivities of the night is I'm trying to get back to my feet. But as I finally get to a stable position on one knee, the helo pilot pulls back on the engines to get ready to take off, which is a little unfortunate because I get caught in the rotor wash. So if you don't know, those 6 25-foot blades put down hurricane force winds, and that rotor wash can be pretty powerful. And as I now know, it's pushing me across the perfectly lubricated landing pad towards the edge. And now I'm flailing, and I look like a turtle that's on its back, just trying to find anything to get a purchase to where I can at least roll over. And unfortunately for me, the only time that happened is I got right to my stomach as I hit the edge. So at this point, my brief but spirited encounter with gravity was going to take a little bit of a turn. I closed my eyes just for a second because I knew it was coming. And I got to my stomach and I got blown over the edge. And everything went quiet just for a minute. It just felt like a minute, probably a few seconds. And I opened my eyes and I'm looking down, but I can't see anything. I can't find the reference point. It's blackness. And I can't figure out what's going on. I'm a little confused. And as I'm laying there, all of a sudden, I feel a pull of my harness. And I got pulled so hard that I'm sure I look like one of those cartoon characters whose body leaves the frame, but their hands are still there, their legs are still there. I got pulled off I landed in a safety net. This particular safety net was made of 1/2-inch steel braided cable, which was woven into about 8-inch squares. The reason I was so confused is my face landed right in one of those 8-inch squares. Couldn't see anything, from either side, so I was a little confused. So we went on to complete the mission, and during the debrief, I remember being so thankful that somebody took the thought to put a safety net right off the landing pad. So we fast forward to the summer of 2003. It's about 1 in the morning, and my phone rings, which wasn't unusual. I had a job that would get called in sometimes. Hey, Sergeant P, it's Brandon. Do you have a minute? So Brandon was a Marine I served with my last duty station. He's a great guy, and like a lot of veterans, when he got out, he went into law enforcement, and he works for a sheriff's department out west. So he did patrol for a few years. He tried out and got accepted onto their agency SWAT team. He was a sniper. And he had called to tell me about an incident that had happened the day before. So Brandon told me that he and his spotter were up 3 stories on the roof of an apartment building across the street from a house where a domestic incident had gone really bad. The husband had taken the wife and the children hostage. It was a barricade situation. So Brandon and his spotter were up there for hours watching this whole situation unfold through the scope of the rifle. When out of nowhere, the door gets slammed open, and the guy is holding his wife by the hair, dragging her out onto the porch, and he has a handgun. And he aims it at his wife's head. Well, Brandon ended the standoff. And he's telling me this story. And he's like, it didn't bother me to shoot the guy with the gun. It didn't bother me that his wife was in hysterics and in shock and screaming on the porch over the body of her husband, who I just shot. What I can't get out of my head is the vision of their child in the front window who had just watched all of this unfold. He said, I can't stop thinking about it. So I let him talk for a little bit more. And finally, when there was a break in the conversation, I suggested that the first thing you should do the next day was to make an appointment with the counseling service that his department was sure going to offer. The second thing I told him to do was write down everything he had just told me, word for word. He was having problems sleeping, so I said, write it down. If it's on paper, your brain doesn't have to think about it. You can let it go. So we talked a little bit more. And as we hung up, he said, I'm really sorry to call you so late. He said, I needed somebody to talk to, and I didn't know who to call. I said, no problem, dude. That's what we're here for. And that's when I realized that not all safety nets are made of half-inch braided steel cable. They're made of flesh and bone, and they look like you and me. And I tell that story because I recently heard an interview with a mental health professional. And she was saying that while women go to therapy to make sure they're okay, men go only because they need hope. And another name for hope is a safety net. Thank you.